Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Today we're going to take on an old war horse. It's a relatively rare reel. A lot of folks don't see this one too much, so I thought maybe we would go do it. This one is a Penn, but it's the Penn Senator 2.0. And a lot of folks get confused because if you put them side by side with a Penn 65 or a 60, they kind of look identical, except for the additional side crossbar and the inside plates. So the truth of the matter is they are pretty much identical. But we're going to take this one apart, we're going to clean it up, we're going to see if we can get it back fishing again. It's obvious that this thing has just been laying around somewhere, all kinds of dust and dirt and grime. It certainly hasn't been fished in a while, it certainly hasn't been taken care of, but you know what, it's still got a crank that's turning. It's got a very difficult free spool release, but it does release and it does turn. So a testament to how Penn made these reels all those years ago. We'll get started. I'm going to strip this reel down. We're going to clean it up, probably off camera. You don't need to see me do the dirty laundry, so to speak. But we'll come back and we'll put it back together and we'll get this thing fishing again. So whenever I encounter a reel that's this tough in shape, you see a lot of the greening on it and dirt and that, you can bet that it's probably been laying around for a while. So before I try to take screws out, I generally will take a penetrating oil like this one. This one is CRC Power Lube. You can use WD-40, you can use liquid wrench, whatever. But I like to give a good squirt on both sides of those crossbars because there's a chance that this thing got all rusted up in there from lack of attention. And again, on the outside, where the screw heads are. You don't want to break these off. I mean, you can get cross posts replaced, but an ounce of prevention, so to speak, is a good way to address this. So these reels you don't find around much, precisely for the reason that I showed you. They're so similar to the 65, why would you pay a couple extra dollars to get the Senator? But inside, I believe that there's a little bit of difference in the main gear. I don't recall, it's been a long time since I've done one of these. So I will report back as soon as we get the case off. Those of you that watch the videos know that I like to do a couple of things. I'd advise you to wear a glove, like right now, because things like that penetrating oil are on the reel, and if you can keep them off your hands, that's a good thing. I also advise that you use a parts tray. Keep all your small pieces and parts so you know where to find them later. And then the last thing I advise is to take pictures and get reel schematics. So the reel schematics for this one is available through Mystic Parts, formerly PennParts.com. This is not that schematic, but that's a picture of what a schematic is. And if you go to www.mysticparts.com, or I believe the PennParts.com still works, go to conventional reels under Senator, select the 2.0 if you're working on a 2.0, and you can pull down the schematic as well as order some replacement parts for it. Okay, so we got 3 long screws, 4 actually, I put one in there, and a smaller one for the reel seat. Notice that this side plate is wider than that side plate, so when you go to take the screws out of this one, excuse me, the screws are going to be shorter. And actually it's going to be the same size as the reel seat screw on the other side, or just about. So just note that when you go to reinstall, don't put the one side onto the other. And I'm just going to kind of keep them separate. We know these belong on the gear side. Put that on one side of my parts tray, and then I'm going to just keep the others separate as we go about the parts tray on the other. And right now I'm just working to get back to the frame. You'll notice that that screw is smaller than the side plate screw as well. Just different dimensions for the 2 different sides. Now these crossbars are going to come out, the 2 on each top will come out now because I've removed all the screws. The other one has got an internal screw to it, and that'll remain part of the frame. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to take the reel apart, and we're going to go put it in an ultrasonic cleaner for starts, and then we'll probably use a chrome polish or something to see if we can't get more of that greening off. But let's get the dust and the dirt and whatever we can off of this before we go much further. Sometimes it's a good idea, I'll do it here maybe just to show you. When you get those one sides off, you can go ahead and put the screw back into it, and just remember that the screws that you took these out of what happened to be the non-gear side, and that way when you go to reinstall you don't mix them up too much. Okay, so those are the pieces there that should enable us to push this out now. Now there's a little stud that sits here on both sides. There's two studs. They're actually the screws, and they may present a little bit of a problem in terms of pushing those pieces out. Just be careful as you go to do that. I'm going to take the handle side off first, then let's go ahead and take the handle. Again, there's a set screw on that. We can use our handle wrench. Folks have asked me about the handle wrench. That's an Allen Tanny aftermarket handle wrench. But if you have the handle wrench that goes with the Penn reels, that certainly works fine. If you work on a lot of Penn reels, then this one is a little bit better. It's a longer handle, and it's a thicker handle, so your wrench doesn't get trapped under the handle screw as you start to move it up. So I would recommend if you work on them. I think they're also available through Mystic Parts. I think they're about $20 maybe for the aftermarket handle. And again, to me it's well worth it because I do work on a lot of the older Penn reels. And it does have the two sizes. It has the one that fits the Long Beach Jigmaster kind of series, and it has the one that fits the 6/0 type Penn bigger reels like the 320s and so on. All right, we're going to take all that out apart now, pull these out. Then again, if you don't know what this the position of this is, go ahead and take pictures. I'm going to put this back on now. Now that I got that stuff away, I'm going to try and use that as a lever to pull that side plate off. It's going to be tight. It's always a problem, so just kind of bear with me. I don't want to go knocking things if I don't have to, or prying things. These are older reels. You always risk breaking a side plate, so if you can kind of work it out. I'm trying to use this for leverage. There we go. We got it off. And you'll look at that inside and you'll say, my gosh, that looks just like the inside of a Penn 65, and for the most part you're right. It is. And then you can see the back side of this as well. Let's see if we can just push that out now. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. There we go. We got the side plate off now, and then we have the case here. So all of this is going to go in to a ultrasound machine, and we're going to try and clean up what we can there. But before we do that, we're going to take off the main gearing. No sense washing that. Pick that handle screw up off the floor in a moment, and we'll get back after we clean this stuff up and show you how to reassemble. So the main difference, if I remember correctly, on this is that the drag system inside should be a little bit deeper, but I may be wrong. That may just be for the bigger reels. Okay, the 4 screws came out. Cup your hand. There's a spring that's holding the anti-reverse dog there. You don't want it to shoot, so if you cup your hand, even if it shoots out of the assembly, it's not going any further than the inside of your hand. And in this case, this is your spring we were talking about here. So the difference here is that the main gear to the Penn Senator 2.0 is a bigger gear assembly than the gear assembly for the 60. And as an example, this would be the gear for the 60, and you can see that there's extra dimension there, which means that this one's got more drag than the Long Beach 60. So we're going to pull this off. We've already taken the screw and the anti-reverse dog off. This should all come off here. Try and get this hard washer off without breaking it. These become very brittle. If we break it, we just have to replace it. And just be careful. And then we'll be ready to give it a bath and come back to to do some more of this. Okay, well, I'm only going to bathe it in water anyway, so if I can't, up there, that cracked, okay. This one's cracked. We'll go find another replacement for this one as we go. And then the last thing I'll do before we go further, we're going to pull the pin on this one. There's a pin that holds the gear sleeve on. Hopefully you can see it in that direction. We're going to pull that and remove the gear sleeve. Everything goes into that parts tray, and we should be able to pull the gear sleeve off. Now it's time to give it a bath. We'll pull the jack, the yoke, the spool gear, the springs, and the side plate. So this one's ready to go get cleaned up now. We're going to pause the video here. We will come back with cleaned parts, and we'll do a reassembly of this, and hopefully we'll get this one fishing again. Okay, so I'm back. Lots of elbow grease, some ultrasonic cleaner, some chrome polish, some steel wool, and a lot of rubbing and the like has pretty much cleaned this one up better than I expected. You'll recall on the spool we had a lot of greening. We still have a couple of little rough spots here, but for the most part the greening is gone. Same thing with the frame. It looks a whole lot better. A lot of that was dust and dirt. I don't know where this reel was stored, but it has gone from pretty bad to pretty much okay for what we're dealing with here. I also mentioned when we took this off that we had a broken backer washer that sits on top, so we went through my files and found one of these to replace that. And it's time to go do some reassembly then. So the first thing I'm going to do is put a little bit of grease onto the back of the spool here so that it turns freely in that adjuster cap. I did put a little bit in there already. I also put some grease onto the click tongue, and that click tongue looks like it's never been used, so that's pretty much an advantage for the age of this reel. I'm also going to put some grease onto the spool shaft here, and then we're just going to set that aside for a moment. So we're going to come over here and we're going to rebuild the side plate. So we took this off, we cleaned it all up with steel wool and chrome polish. Same thing here. I'm going to put a light coating now onto that shaft, and we're going to take a look here. I've already done that, but for your purposes you want to do this. Take a look, make sure all of the teeth are uniform, clean, that there's no debris in the channels. If you find that you have some debris, go ahead and take a soft brush or maybe a small wire brush and just kind of clean through that to knock any pieces out. And then grab that brush of yours and go ahead and give it a nice coating of the gear teeth. That'll ensure some nice smooth operation there. You don't have to do anything on the inside. You've already put grease onto the spool shaft. You don't have to do anything over here. Nothing engages. If you can get some in the slot, that's fine. That slot is for the yoke, so if you grab your grease and just kind of put it on the yoke, you don't have to worry about trying to work it into the other slot there. And then once you do that, then just simply put that through the engagement. We're going to next grab the gear sleeve. I'm going to put that in. And go back here and grab the pin that we took the gear sleeve, took out of the gear sleeve. And go ahead and put that in. And usually you can press that down if you want. You can tap it with a soft blow hammer or whatever. Make sure that this does not ride proud of this ridge. If it does, you're never going to get the other piece on. And then just turn it, make sure it works. Now if you didn't take this off, that oil cap, the screw that holds the handle in, can be removed, and you can put drops of oil in that way. But since we already did this, no need to do the oiling. There's that new replacement hard washer. And up next, we've cleaned all of this out, and this is the body for the main gear assembly. These washers are made of a brake shoe type material. I want to say asbestos. I could be wrong. But it's a hard compound. You don't need to do anything with that. Actually, You know, some folks have tried to oil or grease it. Probably is just like putting grease onto a brake pad. It probably has the exact opposite effect. All of these have been cleaned. You can see they're nice and shiny now. I used the metal polish and the steel wool to do that. The two thick washers go in the cavity of the main gear. You saw that when we took that out, and if you had questions about that, you could always go back to your pictures. This is the second one. And after the second one, as is typical of most Penn reels and most reels in general, there's an eared washer with the two tags. They kind of call it an eared because if you kind of look at it as a face, you got the ears on the side. Those go in, and then they go into the slots in the main gear as such. Then that last hard washer goes on. For whatever reason, the hard washer is being hard on me here. That's okay. And then we have the cap washer. I'm sorry, the last one is the rest of the cleaned metal washers. Then the cap washer goes on. And over here, we've had some stickiness with this gear. Released the lever on the eccentric. So what I did was I just gave that a real good shot of some penetrating oil and let it work itself in while I was cleaning the other pieces and parts. Pretty much have cleaned the residual out of these, but that's soaked, but penetrating oil is not a lubricant, so go ahead and give it some oil. In this case it's Real-X, but make sure when you're doing the oil that you're using an oil designed for a fishing reel. And then I have a little bit of looks like some water left over maybe from the cleaning there. Let's get that out of there. That's better. Sometimes good old-fashioned air will take that out. Yep, we're good. Alright, and then we're going to put some grease into that cavity. I'm just going to use my old-fashioned screwdriver. Many of you that have watched me for a long time know that I fall back on my bad habits from time to time, and that's okay. I'll do it there. I'm going to put some up top here. We can use the brush for that. I'm going to grab the two springs. That's one. Here's the other for the cavity. This is where the magic happens, I guess. We'll take the spool gear with the yoke. I'm going to press down on that. And we're going to go for the jack, which I can't find at the moment. There it is. I knew I had it around here somewhere. Can install the jack. Okay, install the bridge assembly then. You press down on the assembly here and you turn your bridge plate at approximately perpendicular to that. You grab a full threaded screw from the bridge and insert that into the bottom corner. You take the anti-reverse dog, which points up and sits like that. Then you look for that little spring that belongs in here. I know it's in here somewhere because I put all my small pieces and parts in the tray. I found that. And very carefully, it's a spring. It's going to shoot if you don't take care here. But just work with that spring to get it into the cavity and holding. And you'll know when you did that. Sometimes an assist from a screwdriver will help. And when you've properly loaded it, oops, just jumped out there. Happens to the best of us, happens to the worst of us. Okay, grab that spring again. Let's make sure we reload properly. That feels pretty good. Pull this down a little bit. Well, a little bit of trouble with it. Just be patient. It is a spring, it will load and it will pop. Okay, there we go. So that's loaded properly. Continue with the rotation then of the bridge. The bridge is going to hold the spring in its cavity. And just 1 or 2 turns here, don't go crazy. You want to make sure that all of your bridge screws are in before you tighten down. The next one up then is a partially threaded screw that goes through the springs on this and attaches to the top of the bridge plate. And what I do is northeast, southwest. So I've done 2. I'm going to come over and put the other partially threaded screw into the top of this side of the assembly. And then there's one more. It's a fully threaded one, belongs on the bottom of the other side. And again, I haven't tightened any of these down yet. I want them all to catch. They've all caught now. So I'm going to go back to the first one, tighten, come up again to the north side, come to the east side, whatever orientation you're using here, and then finally the other one. And then we're going to give it a test here, make sure that we've got everything. I can hear that anti-reverse dog holding, which is perfect. And we're going to go over then and load. Now there's only one other piece here that you probably want to lube. You want to just put a little bit around the crown of this jack assembly here. We weren't able to do that when we were assembling. That's just to grease it where those 2 pieces of metal meet. You'll come back in here and load. Now you can't twist this one on. This one's got 2 studs here that go in the holes on both sides there. So you need to make sure that you just line it up and then you kind of press in as opposed to trying to screw it on any other way. And you'll know you're pressed in when all of the rings kind of match up there. So because these have the 2 holes that are kind of studded there, I like to go for the short screw first, just to hold that bottom part of the assembly in place, which we're doing now. And then I'm going to come up all the way up top on both sides, grab those. That'll pull the trim rings in if they haven't been pulled in already. And then come over to the other side here. Now these are the longer screws, so if you paid attention coming, taking these things out and putting them back in makes it easy. I've taken too many reels apart now where I've seen all different types of lengths and sizes of screws, side plate screws that belong here on the wrong side and so on. And I always like to say it was engineered with the longer ones, use the longer ones there. I imagine that it has a minor effect on the integrity of the reel, but somebody will appreciate the work you've done or haven't done based on did you put it back together correctly, and that's a part of this, putting it back correctly. Okay, that'll take care of the last one of these. And just to check before you go any further, just make sure they're tight on that side and tight on this side. Boat vibration will push these screws out, so you don't want to give the boat any opportunity to get ahead of you in terms of doing that. All right, the sleeve. Nice shiny new, not new, but cleaned up drag adjuster. Be careful with this one. You don't want to cross thread these. Folks hear me say that all the time, and quite honestly, there must be a reason for that, right? As in, I probably have cross-threaded it. This one was sitting underneath the handle, so we're going to go put it back there. Here's the handle. Just looking for the nut I picked up off the floor. And quite honestly not seeing, oh, here it is. I put the screw. I keep calling it a nut. Now, if you didn't put the grease in there, you could put the grease, put a drop of oil in there at this point if you were tuning up and you didn't take that gear sleeve off. Tighten this down now. So overall, nice reel. It's got a heftier drag than the 65. We saw that as we took this apart, the 60 to the 65. Both of them are essentially the same reel with a bigger frame capacity for line. So 60 would be lined up with this one. Heavier drags mean you could do bigger fish with this. Alright, that's tightened down. We'll tighten down the drag now. We'll put the pole mount on here. We'll grab those 2 wing nuts and then we'll give it a spin and we'll see how we did. This one's a little bit unusual. Most of the time you find the used reels, you don't find them with the rod attachment. In this case, this was attached to a rod that I purchased. So I came off with it, and I'll leave this to the next person if they want to mount the rod with the reel seat attachment or not. Okay, so let's give it a ride then. First of all, we're in free spool, and that's, boy, is that running nice? This reel's probably, I don't know, 40 years old or something. It's been a while, and you don't hear a chirp, a spin, a chip, anything. All right, so how do you adjust the spool tension? So this one's knocking side to side. You want to use the adjuster here to turn to the point where you have a light amount of play. That's it, right there. You don't want to over tighten. You want it just right, and that's just right. Just a little bit of play side to side. All right, let's put this back into gear then, give it a drive. Well, isn't that a nice reel? Make sure that the drags are tight, the drags are tight. This thing screams. So there you go. There's your Penn Senator 2.0. Bigger drag set than the 65, the Penn 60 that we were talking about here. All cleaned up, buffed up nice given the condition of it when we first got started on it. And this one's ready to go fishing again. So with that, I hope you've enjoyed it. If you've enjoyed it, please subscribe to my channel. That's what keeps my channel going. If you have a reel like this that is giving you some trouble and you think it's beyond your ability to go fix, well, I repair reels by mail as well. So if you want, you can shoot me an email on secondchancetackle@gmail.com, and I'll be happy to work with you to get your reel back in fishing again. So with that, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.